In the year 1800, Great Britain launched the greatest industrial revolution in human history. At that exact moment, less than 3% of its adult population was allowed to vote. Today, in 2026, the same international institutions that were built by that wealth tell African nations they cannot develop unless they implement full, multi-party democracy first. Nobody has ever explained why the rule changed only when it got to them. So which is it? Was democracy actually the engine that built the modern world? Or is that just the story they tell the people they don't want catching up? Africa's poverty was never a democracy problem. It is a sovereignty problem. And the people who run the global economy know it. That is exactly why they need you to believe otherwise. I am going to give you the 3 objections you are already thinking of, the arguments you've been taught since birth, and I'm going to take each one apart right here with no cuts. Welcome to the channel. If you're here, you're looking for the mechanics behind the headlines, the stuff they don't put in the textbooks because it's too uncomfortable for the people who write them. If that's what you want, hit the subscribe button and join the conversation. Let's get into it. Let's start with the objection everyone raises first, the one that feels like a historical fact. But Western countries did have democracy when they got rich. Look at the UK. Look at the US. They had parliaments and elections while they were building their empires. Let's concede the literal technicality fast. Yes, Britain had a parliament. The United States had a Congress. There were ballots being cast. But let's demolish the substance. When Britain was the workshop of the world, the vote was restricted to a tiny elite of property-owning men. The working class, the people actually in the factories, had no say. In America, while the railroads were being laid and the steel mills were rising, the democracy was built on the back of Jim Crow and property qualifications. Women couldn't vote. Black Americans couldn't vote. The poor couldn't vote. These weren't democracies in the sense being demanded of Africa today. They were oligarchies with a vote attached. They were systems where a small group of elites could make long-term, often brutal industrial decisions without worrying about an election cycle every 4 years. When the IMF says democracy to an African finance minister, they don't mean what Britain and America actually had when they got rich. They are demanding something much stricter than their own history. They are asking Africa to do something no Western nation has ever done, to manage the chaos of early industrialization while being held accountable to a 100% inclusive electorate. It is a standard designed to ensure instability. That leads us to the second objection, the one that sounds smartest. Correlation isn't causation. Maybe those countries got rich for other reasons, not because they were authoritarian. Authoritarianism is usually a disaster for the economy. You are right, conceded. Authoritarianism by itself does not cause growth. Most authoritarian states stay poor, and many get poorer because they are led by thieves. Mobutu Sese Seko's Zaire is the perfect example. He was an autocrat supported by the West for 30 years, and he left his country with nothing but debt and ruins. But here is the reframe. This is the part that actually matters. The West and the Asian tigers never had to pass a democracy test as a precondition for receiving capital, aid, or trade access. Look at South Korea under the military rule of Park Chung-hee. Look at Taiwan under the KMT's martial law. Look at Singapore under Lee Kuan Yew. Nobody in Washington or the World Bank demanded that Park Chung-hee hold competitive, multi-party elections before they sent the billions in investment that built the Korean miracle. They didn't care about Lee Kuan Yew's treatment of the opposition as long as the factories were running and the communists were kept out. Africa is the only region in history asked to clear that bar first. The democracy requirement is a selective moral filter. It is used to withhold capital from leaders who want sovereignty while being completely ignored for leaders who are willing to play ball. Now we reach the objection that is hardest to dodge, the one people use to end the debate. China proves that authoritarianism has a body count. The Great Leap Forward killed tens of millions of people. Are you saying that's a model we should follow? Full concession. Yes, that happened. Tens of millions of people died of starvation and state violence. It is not a footnote, it is a catastrophe. But here's the rebuttal. The claim was never that authoritarianism is safe. The claim is that the West does not get to demand a risk-free, casualty-free path to development from Africa when no path anyone has ever taken was risk-free. Britain's industrial takeoff ran on the blood of Caribbean slavery and the engineered famines of colonial India. The democratic West's wealth was bought with the lives of millions across the global South. And look at the safe alternative. Look at India. India has been a democracy for over 70 years, and yet, even today, hundreds of millions live in extreme poverty. Democracy did not protect the Indian poor from the slow, agonizing death of malnutrition or the lack of basic sanitation. There is no clean version of this story. Not the West's, not China's, not India's. The question was never which path has no cost. The question is, who gets to choose which costs they are willing to bear and who doesn't? When the West demands democracy as a prerequisite for development, they are essentially saying, we will allow you to grow only if you use a system that makes it impossible for you to make the hard, long-term decisions we made. If you want the final proof that this was never about democracy, look at what happens when African leaders choose sovereignty anyway. Look at the pattern. Patrice Lumumba in the Congo was democratically elected. He was a populist. He wanted to use the Congo's mineral wealth for the Congolese. He was assassinated with Belgian and US involvement. Kwame Nkrumah in Ghana. He was the architect of Pan-Africanism. He was building the foundations of a sovereign industrial power. He was overthrown in a coup that the US government had foreknowledge of and supported. Thomas Sankara in Burkina Faso. He rejected foreign aid, vaccinated millions, and made his country food self-sufficient in 4 years. He was murdered by a partner backed by France. Now notice what they were killed for. It wasn't for being undemocratic. Mobutu in Zaire was far less democratic than any of them. He was a brutal dictator. But Mobutu got 3 decades of Western support, luxury trips to Washington, and billions in loans. Why? Because Mobutu handed over the resources. Lumumba, Nkrumah, and Sankara refused. The democracy lie is a smokescreen. If you are a dictator who sells your country's minerals for cheap, you are a stabilizing partner. If you are a Democrat who wants to nationalize your oil, you are a threat to global stability. So what is the motive? Africa sits on the most critical mineral position in the modern world. Cobalt for your EVs, lithium for your batteries, copper for your green transition. Economist Ha-Joon calls it kicking away the ladder. The West climbed the ladder of development using state power, protectionism, and restricted politics. But now that they are at the top, they've kicked the ladder away. They've told Africa, you have to use the other ladder, the one called liberal democracy, the one that makes it impossible for you to stay on for more than 4 years at a time. They sold you a rule they never followed so that you would never catch up. Let's restate the verdict. You can disagree with parts of this. I showed you the strongest objections on purpose because I wanted you to see the fight. But what you can no longer do is pretend the question is about democracy. It never was. Africa's struggle isn't about finding the right ballot box. It is about reclaiming the right to exist as a sovereign power that doesn't ask for permission to grow. And yes, Africa has had its own share of extractive dictators who used the word sovereignty as a shield while they robbed their own people. That is not a contradiction to this argument. It is the other half of the trap. but that is a story for the next episode. Do you believe Africa can ever be truly sovereign within a global system that demands democracy as a price for entry? Or is the system itself the problem? Let's talk in the comments. If you learned something that wasn't in your history book, hit the subscribe button. Thanks for watching.